Matthew had been talking to me about Tandem pretty much even before we finished Redenbacher. He started having like test scripts probably a month before we actually like finished wrapping or finished the actual film, and it grabbed my interest pretty much immediately. But I knew it wasn't going to happen for quite a while.
Then over the course of the summer, I revised it multiple times. Got probably about 5 versions of the screenplay before I was satisfied with it. It was always the same premise, but always executed throughout different scenes. There wasn't a single scene that was copied over from one screenplay to another, because I knew that with this film, it was a very personal story, and that if I didn't take the time to make it authentic, then it would just be derivative and insincere. So I wanted to make sure that it was quality.
Well, yeah, I was in Redenbacher, one of Matthew's earlier works, and then he started working on Tandem and asked if I wanted to be a part of that. And I had a lot of fun and a very good time being in Redenbacher, so I wanted to be in another one, so here we are.
Yeah, so I was in theater with ABR and Jack, and they asked me if I want to be part of Matthew's short film, and I was like, yeah, why not?
A primary concern with making Tandem was to take the time before shooting to ensure that the locations were what we wanted them to be.
Yeah, it was a pretty good time doing test shots. We drove around a lot, mostly in Jake's car, which was pretty funny because he probably has the smallest car of all of us. And so Matthew would always take front seat with Jake, and then we'd cram the rest of us in the back seat.
What we had to do was we had to make Alexis's house visually unique so that if we showed the house in a previous scene, the audience would recognize this house in a future scene.
We went to this one neighborhood, and I noticed that it looked quite familiar. And it looked like Kelsey's neighborhood, the actress who was playing Alexis.
So after AVR noticed that, I pulled out Snapchat to see if we could creepily track her on Snapchat. And we did, and she ended up being only like 3 houses away from us, so we just slowly crept up in my car and called her repeatedly.
From the get-go, Matthew had pretty much the whole script finalized, and we both realized that the hardest scene to get down, both from an acting standpoint and from a filming standpoint, was going to be the bathroom scene. So in order to really nail it down, we did a few test shots, one of which was in the 3rd floor of our school, in the bathroom on the 3rd floor. And if you watch it and then watch the final product, hopefully you'll also see a pretty significant improvement. It definitely is the epitome of a test shot. I had just had my wisdom teeth out, so my cheeks were really poofy. I was wearing my glasses. The lighting was horrible. The bathroom was way cleaner than we wanted it to be. The blocking was very rudimentary compared to how it eventually came out.
Something that really caught me off guard was that he actually cut himself during the test scene. Like, there was actually blood on his arms in the test scene. Something that we both knew would never make it into the film. So that really showed me that, okay, this dedication is going to really make the scene incredible.
First ever shot of Matthew's Brainchild Part 2. You got audio, lights, actor, genius.
So I was supposed to be shooting behind the scenes for Tandem, and so at the bathroom scene, which was the first that we shot, I had climbed up onto a ledge at the top of this bathroom inside of it, and I was just shooting down below.
When we got there, first shot, we did maybe 6 takes. It was just him walking in. Got the shot, and second shot, probably the first take of it, I said, so this may not be perfect, we're just giving it a go.
Very furry.
Might as well, right? It was perfectly timed so that when he threw the trash can, the door was opened by none other than a policeman. And for the second time in less than a year, we had one of our filming sessions broken up by the Popo.
So when we were filming Redenbacher last year,
we were using my grandparents' house that had just recently burned down because it was very aesthetically pleasing. And but while we were filming, I guess we were making kind of a lot of noise, and some of the neighbors complained. So in the middle of one of our shots, a police officer came in and asked what we were doing, who we were, why we were on this property, and kind of freaked us all out.
After getting our names, checking our driver's licenses, the cop told us, okay, you guys gotta go. I mean, people think you're shooting a porn in here. Evidently we were not, but he still said we had to leave, and he asked us, I don't know why he did this, but he said, do you guys have anywhere else you can film this? And knowing that we did have somewhere else to film it, I told him, no sir, we have nowhere else to film it. And he said, okay, how much time do you need? And I go, 30 minutes. Okay, let's get this done.
Yeah. This movie was much more of a challenge than Redenbacher was in terms of primarily physical acting. This became readily apparent with the shooting of the mall scene.
My first time filming with them was the mall scene, and we had to be there at 5 a.m. and it had just rained, so pretty much my entire job was to sit on a wet bench.
While we were there, because it was so early and the mall hadn't opened yet, so there was a power washer cleaning the sidewalks, and that was a pain in the butt for me because I had to work around, I couldn't aim it at him because it would pick up the sound and it would just drown out everything else. And so I had to position myself, and Matthew was telling me where to go so I wouldn't be in the shot, but I'd be as close as possible. So that was a huge blocking thing the first time I had to work on that. So yeah.
Hands down, the hardest thing about the mall scene, besides just the waking up early, the weather, was the fact that it was so incredibly hard to score for this music. And scoring it probably took a total 5 months because we went through several different versions, and it was just, we could not convey that sense of anxiety that we needed to. The foundation of the collaboration between myself and the band Ledesma occurred back when I was finishing up Redenbacher, and I was showing one of my close friends, Ethan Ring, who's in the band, the entire film, and there was this one scene that I had yet to figure out the song for. Even though most of the film was comprised of 60s British invasion music, which meant I couldn't post it anywhere, I could not figure out a song that I was happy with. And Ethan just started strumming along to the scene on guitar.
Put your hands where I can see them.
We would shoot a scene, and I would bring it over to Jaden's house, which is where he has all the recording equipment. And I would show them the scene, and I would tell them the style I want, and tell them the instruments that I would like. It was typically an acoustic guitar, maybe 2, and a keyboard. So then, from then on, it was just about figuring out how many measures, what tempo we needed to get, so that when it starts, it will be at the beginning of the scene, when it ends, it will be the end of the scene, etc., etc. It was really awesome because it added this whole new layer to the film that made it feel like a real world that the film inhabited. Because all the songs seem very stylistically consistent, and all of them build to that final montage in which the Muses Will Sing plays, and that's the first lyric in the film. That scene is the first song with lyrics, and I think it really relieves a lot of tension, and it's really quite incredible.
When we were shooting the final montage, we were able to make use of a suction cup mount that was used in an earlier film. And Matthew was a little nervous about using it because the last time he used it, a lens broke of his camera. So to ensure that it would not fall,
we both suctioned it to the side of the car, and then we also tied it to the top of the car, just for extra safety and protection.
The whole philosophy with the final montage was pretty much shoot as much as possible, and whatever we use, and whatever we don't, well, at least we had it as an option. And so, over the course, I think it was of 3 individual shooting days, we pretty much spent all day just shooting as many shots of me riding the bike as possible, and that was probably the biggest physical challenge in the movie. Just because not only did I just have to ride the bike, but we had to make sure it looked as good on camera as possible, because the final montage is the most important part of the movie. I mean, it's the climax. It's supposed to show Stuart finally moving on and growing as a character, and so we wanted to make it as beautiful and epic and emotional as possible, and so it was definitely a challenge, but I'm very, very happy with how it came out.
So when we were shooting the scene at the school, I was just an extra, and my only line was, "See you later, Garrett." And not everyone was at the scene yet, at the set, so I made it my mission to sabotage both ABR and Jack's performance.
And he kept, how should I say, messing it up on purpose, and he kept, doing fun things to throw us off and screw us up, and it took a very long time to just get past that first bit, and it was like the first 10 seconds of the scene.
No, she started to give me her weekly spiel. Not really. Once she started to give me her... See you, man. Once she started to give me her weekly spiel about the whole thing, I just decided to ramble on about my dyslexic grandmother.
Which one had dyslexia?
Does it matter?
It's the dead one.
They're both the dead one.
Garrett.
Out of all the physical trials this movie kind of put me through, the worst one was by far the winding sidewalk shot. Now, I really emphasize the word shot there because it wasn't even a scene, it was just a transitionary shot, and it came out really nice looking. It looks quite pretty, the sky looks really lovely, the colors really complement each other very well, but it was one of the worst experiences I've ever had in my entire life.
We had a jib crane that we were using, and that meant that 3 people had to be on the same page. And because of that, we had to have Andrew ride down the windy sidewalk for an hour straight.
At some point, somebody said, "Hey, at the end of the hill, you should fall down for a little bit of comedy." So then I started doing that, and I assumed we only had probably, two more attempts, and then we'd be done. We ended up doing like 10 more shots.
I thought he was just doing it as a creative liberty, as a interpretation, and I was just letting him do it. Because I was like, well, if he really wants to do it, he can, but I'm going to tell him I tried to put it in the film, but it ultimately did not work.
The bike, the tandem bike.
It was clunky. It broke so often. We ended up generally many shots having to spend like 30 minutes trying to fix it because Nate generally wasn't there, and we're dumb, so we had to figure out ways to fix this jank tandem bicycle.
Matthew was willing to give up his only birthday present for this tandem bike. So his dad got him this tandem bike, and it comes in the mail and it's in this giant box, but it's not assembled yet. So after football practice one day, I drove over to Matthew's house, and me and him and ABR just sat down in his driveway and put it together. And I enjoyed doing that because a couple summers before that, my job was like assembling and fixing bikes and like de-rusting it. So I knew pretty well how to assemble stuff and all the right bolts and wrenches you needed for that. So that was a good time. And then we got to ride it, and the sunset was great. And so I enjoyed doing that. And then later, The only other time I rode the tandem bike was with ABR, and we were getting this shot. We were getting audio dubbing for when he was riding, and so that we could underlay it with the audio of them talking. So I was riding on the back of the bike, and ABR was driving, and I was just like, no hands, holding on, squeezing with my thighs to not fall off, and like just sticking the boom right by the gear so we could get the audio in the right levels. So that was a good time.
There has never been more of a horrendous request in my life that I've ever had to ask for than finding ways to transport the bike. And the phrase transport the bike is something we feared greatly.
You know, I gotta say, it's bittersweet. I've had some good experiences on this bike, had some bad experiences on this bike.
This is true. You've fallen many a time.
I have fallen many a time.
On
Some
purpose
on
and
purpose,
accident.
some on accident. But I will say, I think I'm gonna miss it. I think I'm gonna miss it in the end.
In order to get into character, we would sumo wrestle beforehand. I don't know
As
who
one does.
I don't know who started that.
I don't either.
I think we. Why did we do that?
I really don't know where that came from.
But it worked. I mean, I thought it got us in character pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, Alexis and Stuart's like inner conflict, it really needed to be like represented,
Expressed.
in a very like outward sense.
Mm.
So in order for us to fully grasp it. So I thought that really accomplished it for the most part.
So yeah, this is generally how our warm up ritual would go. So
The most difficult conditions to film in, by far, was the party scene.
So Matthew and I had showed up at Travis's house, and we were the first people there, so we went up to his door and knocked a lot of times, and it seemed like no one was there. So we called Travis over and over, and he just kept not answering, which wasn't that much of a surprise, but we tried to hop the fence on the other side to get in through the basement, and that didn't work. So we ended up having like 10 people there just kind of waiting, and Matthew, of course, didn't have any shoes on. But finally, Travis's dad pulled up and had no idea we were coming. So I, as always, was elected to speak to him and got into the house. And Travis ended up being fast asleep.
The party scene was actually really fun because I think it's the scene that has the most people in it all together at once. And they weren't all necessarily actors, so it was kind of fun to just hang out with them and eat pizza for like hours.
It was a very long scene, several hours. We got to eat pizza and we were doing puzzles. And in between takes, I was watching some basketball because that's what I like to do in my free time. And it was great having Jake there and Taylor there and the whole enchilada. And we had some fun outtakes and it was a good time. I got to pretend to be the cool life of the party, which doesn't happen very much. So it was a very fun experience and an honor to be a part of.
It makes sense that the hardest shot that we ended up getting was the final one, which was the dumpster.
the worst was really actually the last shot, which was actually the last shot we shot ever. We pretty much wrapped after that.
I had location scouted, took pictures of many dumpsters, and sent them in a group text and said, which dumpster should we throw the bike in? And we ended up settling on this pretty simple one just simply because it was blue. And we felt that that was great because the bike is also blue.
The first time I threw the bike in, it didn't quite land properly, and it kind of, well, we took it out, and the chains were all over the place, and it was just a mess. So we managed to put it back together, do it again. Did not get it in this time either, and it was even more broke.
And the bike fell apart before we were able to do so, and we just had to manhandle it to get it to finish.
And it landed somehow perfectly with the wheel just sticking out, and I walked off frame. And immediately after, Matthew and I just hugged each other, and we were just ecstatic that we finally got that friggin' shot. But that was one of the most gratifying days of shooting I think we had ever had.
Oh, God! That is a wrap. That's a wrap.
So I was a bigger part of filming at the beginning of Tandem, and I had to be in Dallas most of the shoots throughout the year. So without actually seeing the progress of the movie, but maybe once every couple weeks, I watched a very close friend of mine just waste away into this beautiful movie.
I'm so happy that Matthew asked me to come back for this movie. It had its challenges. It was a hell of a ride to make, but I had such a good time working with these people who I'm proud to call my friends.
A film like this doesn't get made by people who aren't best friends, and this entire cast and crew is above all best friends, and we all love each other very much. We worked incredibly hard to make something that we're proud of, because as we're all going our separate ways for college, this is something that we can always look back on and be proud of. And even though at some point we probably will look down on certain aspects of the film because we've progressed in our artistic abilities, this film will always mean something to all of us.
I'm very happy to have been a part of it. These are fond memories I will carry with me through my life, and it was just a very fun experience, and I hope Matthew can go on to be a very famous director someday, so I can look back and be like, hey, I was in his student films, and it'll just be a good old time.
Going into it, I didn't really know what to expect because I never worked on a short film before, but it ended up being really fun, and I'm just really excited to see how the final product turned out.
It was a great time. Every time we'd go out and film together, it was just all laughs, but we still got the work done and in a good amount of time, because in past films we'd be having a good time, but we wouldn't be getting work done efficiently.
We were really meticulous about it and wanted to achieve perfection. So I just thought it was really fun to get to work with my friends, to create something that was fun in the process, but also the outcome was awesome.
I really hope that this makes an impact on people and it leaves them feeling that they watch something genuinely important. And I just want to thank Matthew again for involving me in another great ride and a fantastic journey. So, thank you so much.